Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Great show for you guys today. We're going to chat about some of the guys that were hardest to evaluate in this draft, the guys that were just hard to pin down for one reason or another for our two resident draft experts here at the Athletic Football Show. Here to help me do that, first off, it's Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It feels weird to be going first when our other person on this podcast has such a big day. It's basically his holiday.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah, April 10th. That's what it is. I don't know if we're going to do like the first Wednesday, the second Wednesday of every April, kind of like that. That's how we'll do it. But no, I'm doing very well. Very excited to dig into the show. Talk about different positions, which would be very, very fun.
Also joining us today, it is his day, our draft expert here at The Athletic. It's Dane Brugler. Dane, how you feeling today, man?
I'm good. It's a sigh of relief to just be able to share this. Like if there's something I need to tweak, if there's a typo, I don't even care. Just it's out there in the world. Everyone can consume it and do it with it as they please. A lot of great feedback so far. That's the compliments, all the feedback has been awesome, and it makes it all worth it. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of year-round work, and so you put it all into this one document, this one day. But yeah, so far it's been awesome to hear from everybody, and so far so good. Seems like people like it, and I think it'll take a few more weeks before people can really get through it and all the stuff that's in there. But if you're a casual fan, if you're a diehard, there's something in here for everybody. And so as long as you have your athletic subscription, it's included. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out.
What we're alluding to is Dane's Draft Guide, The Beast, came out on Wednesday, April 10th. 1,800 players it
was just shy of 2,000.
Just shy of 2,000 players have official testing information, and we have 400 plus scouting reports on pretty much every single player that is going to get drafted. We're talking about high school background, family background, what sort of recruit they were, what the recruiting process looked like, what happened early in their college career, what happened later in their college career. Did they switch positions? What do scouts have to say about them? What do their position coaches have to say about them? What do teammates have to say about who they were in the locker room, what sort of leader they are, what sort of presence they are, what sort of maturity issues we might be dealing with? We're talking about this for 400 guys. If you want to prep for what the draft is going to look like, there is truly, and I'm not saying this because he's on this show or that he's my friend, there is truly nothing like this. So right now, stop what you're doing, press pause. The only time I'll ever tell you to do this, go to The Athletic and get your subscription if you do not have one, so you can get access to the Beast. If you're listening to this show, you should read this document. The overlap here, the Venn diagram is a circle. So I highly, highly encourage you guys to go do that right now if you have not, because it is an indispensable resource in this space, and it is truly unlike any other product that is released around the NFL draft every single year. And Dane does tireless work to make this thing what it is, and I would love if you guys would go and support him in even more than you do right now.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And even if you don't agree, like with all my rankings or evaluations, right, just use it as a resource guide.
Even better.
Like you said, Robert, it's all the background information and all the, there's a lot of things in here that even if you don't agree with how I see a player, that's fine. You'll still get so much out of this draft guide.
I think
over 400 players in it and over 400 characters in the password. That's
trust me. We had a conversation about that I had a conversation after the fact about that. So it is what it is. Yeah.
Hey, it's great. It's great. It passes every password check that'll be out there.
There's always
no one's hacking in.
No,
there's always good nuggets in here. My favorite one today, Cooper Beebe's dad played at Pittsburgh State. Who else played at Pittsburgh State, Nate? That was an NFL player in the last 10 years.
Wide receiver.
Wide receiver, John Brown.
It's John Brown. John Brown was played at Pittsburgh State, and his mom was a basketball player at Kirkwood Community College. That's where my brother went before he went to the University of Iowa. So no matter who you are or where you reside in the world, I'm sure something about the background of one of these guys is going to touch your personal experience. That's the sort of breadth of information that we're talking about here.
And that's my favorite part of doing this guide is diving into the background of all these guys and, to figure out where they're headed, understanding where they're from. and the journey they've taken, because no two journeys are the same. And it's really, it's a great opportunity for the families of all these players to, get a little bit of attention on them as part of their report. So, like I said, there's something for everybody in here, and I really appreciate everyone checking it out.
What's so awesome is that it's timeless too, Dane. Like I would say, I'm not going to lie, I did not watch Byron Young last year, who was playing with the Rams. He shows up for me in preseason when I'm watching him. I go back to the Beast and I look at, I was like, oh, okay, he is older. Oh, okay, but that was all the transfers. He was late. Okay, he was late to football. Knew nothing about it. But it's not just a resource for the next couple of weeks. It's a resource for years. It's awesome. I know so much praise. It's so worth it, Dane.
Free agency in 4 years, you can go back. Oh, what did he run at his pro day? What was his 40 time? Or even stuff like that. Yeah, like you said, it's a resource guide for the next 10 years, and it's almost like a time capsule of what these guys are right now. And so, I hear from a lot of people that have been getting this guide for years and years, and they still reference it to this day. So
it's awesome. All the stories. Back when I used to be a sports writer, one of my favorite things to do every single year was do like a pre-draft profile of someone, just because every single one of so many of these guys just have incredible backstories. I remember going with Danny Shelton to the corner where his brother was killed, and in the cemetery that day, and just how powerful that was. Or when I went to visit Leighton Vander Esch, this tiny little town, like up on the top of a mountain where he grew up in Idaho, and there was like 400 people who lived there. It just, the fact that I did one of those every single year, and I felt like that was a big lift, and Dane does 400 of them to some extent, I think tells you about what sort of work we're talking about here. So please go check that out if you have not. Today, we're going to dig into some of the tougher evaluations in that draft guide and some of the tougher evaluations that both of you guys have had to dig into over the course of this process. What we're going to do today is we're going to go position by position and talk about the players at those spots that were the hardest for both of you to evaluate. So let's start. We're going to skip quarterbacks. We talked all about quarterbacks. We've done quarterbacks. We're also going to skip receivers because we had this exact conversation last week about receivers. So we're going to start today is at running back, a position we really haven't talked about at all, other than mentioning in passing that there are no highly draftable running backs in this class. So let's start with your guy, Dane. Yours was Braelon Allen from Wisconsin, who you have at 97 on your big board. Nate has him at 77 on his big board. What about Braelon Allen's evaluation was tough for you as you were trying to parse it?
I think the fact that you look at him and you see a guy that looks like a linebacker. He actually went to Wisconsin as a linebacker. Yeah,
he was, right?
Yeah. So, again, you learn that in the Beast. So
That's
he
where
goes
I learned
it. Exactly, right. So he looks like a linebacker, but he doesn't always play like you would expect. I mean, he is a good athlete for a size. Unfortunately, no testing information for him. He's still working his way back. I mean, I think he could work out. I'm sure he's doing the workouts on his own, and the numbers aren't where he wants them to be. So we're not going to have official numbers, testing numbers for him, but he's a good athlete for his size. It's just, I don't know. He's more finesse than physical, and a guy that's just going to run you over. He has some power to him just because his body is built the way it is. But and that also you factor in, the durability has been a question mark. This year was his lowest output in terms of rushing because of battling some injuries, some fumbles. So I like him as a player. It's just, I'm not sure. Okay. Like what's his best comp? Can we think he could be a workhorse at the next level, or is he just a complimentary back? I'm trying to get there, trying to get a firm opinion on this is what he's going to look like in the NFL. And I have a tough time doing that with him.
235 and worries about his physicality from you, I think is pretty telling. The fact that it's more of a finesse player at that size. You comped him to Tyler Algier as like the type of profile he might fit in the league. Tyler Algier was a 5th round pick. So if you're talking about a guy that, other people have in the top 75 or could go on day 2, and you're comping him to Tyler Algier was a 5th round pick, I think, again, that's also pretty telling. Nate, you have him at 77. I'm wondering if this is a bit of Badger blindness, Badger bias, whatever B's you want to go with. But why are you a little bit higher, do you think, on Braelon Allen than Dane is?
I've crushed him for years as a Badger fan a little bit. Oh, you're not this, because there is some frustrations because he has such a big body. and you want him just to barrel over guys. But I think because of that, it kind of underrates his footwork and underrates some of the finesse ability that he has in such a big body. I would say because he doesn't bowl over guys, when you watch him on film and you see some of the side tackles he runs through, that's what grew me on him. And ended up, I feel 77 is the same. I bet you Dane and I have him graded almost similarly, but almost all these backs are probably about the same grade. It's just that, oh, okay, I like this. It's the youth with him. I think his hands are actually pretty good. Not going to be a great route runner, but he'll find check down options. Not a negative, kind of like Algier. That's a pretty good comparison. I actually was kind of going to go another guy who I've experienced with, but it's James Conner without the physicality. And the fact that it's a big body with some nice footwork, has a little burst, but doesn't have that overwhelming long speed. Gets the 1 or 2 gear, but then not the 3, 4, 5. And that's kind of how he runs. That's who I'm familiar with. Same kind of body type as well, and same kind of weight. But the thing is, James Conner is going to run over 3 guys in short yardage and get those tough yards. So I struggle with him a little bit. So I'm glad this would have been one of my guys that I saw that Dane had him. So I was like, okay, good. Let's talk about him. I ended up liking him more the more I watched him, the more he grew on me, the more I saw some of the finesse stuff. He's almost a zone runner in a big body, not a power runner that's going to run at a gap scheme. So I think some teams will like that because of the size and stuff. I will say the one thing that did annoy me was after the starting quarterback got hurt last year, he tanked in the middle of the game, and you could see him getting frustrated with his teammates. And it's something that's good. And I even see Dane that wrote him up that he's competitive and everything. That's kind of why I've heard the same, but also it was like, have a little maturity. You're supposed to be the leader and everything, and you're supposed to be the guy, and everyone's feeding off of you. And I saw him kind of give up mentally a little bit when the starter went out. And that's something anecdotally I noticed, and something I would question him on if I was interviewing him. But I'm with Dane that he's weird. He's finessey in a big body. I do like him, but I do understand he has limitations.
Well, and then you throw in the fact that he's literally one of the youngest players, prospects we've ever seen. I mean, there's not a lot of
you'll hear a lot
guys.
Of it.
He just turned 20 years
throughout
old.
his entire rookie season.
Yeah,
yes,
just turned 20 years old in January, and so that's throws another part into this. That obviously that's a point in his favor. A guy that's this young that should theoretically get better and better as he continues to mature physically, mentally. But how do you factor that age into? And that's part of why I wanted to talk about him, because how do you factor that age into his evaluation in terms of stacking these running backs? It's a little bit tough to do,
especially at a position like running back, which is quote unquote the easier position to learn. It's not like we're saying it's a quarterback or a tackle or something like that.
Let's shift to another Big Ten running back here, Nate. Yours was Blake Corum from Michigan. You had him at 86 on your big board. Dane had him at 77. Both pretty close in terms of the overall ranking. Dane had him as his running back 2, though. And right. Nate, you had Corum as your running back 5. So what about Blake Corum made him a difficult evaluation for you in the procce?
I really want to love him because he's a small back, but he runs big. Him and Allen are opposite. they like Corum should run like Allen does, and Allen should run like Corum does based on body type, but runs between the tackles. He's got good vision. He really knows how to tempo his runs. Like he just has that feel, that advanced feel for running, but he's small. He has a little tread on his tires, and that is where my worries show up. He doesn't have receiving production, but I haven't considered that a negative because that's not the offense there. And 2 is that
JJ McCarthy doesn't have passing production.
No, it's not him splitting out, do all this stuff from empty. So it's, so I'm not going to knock him too much because I've seen him catch the ball. The touchdown against Alabama is the one that sticks out. It's wide open, but you can kind of see the soft hands looking at it and all that. There's other ones too, but there's just some size concerns and the tread concerns that is always in the back of my mind when I watch him. He did test way better than I actually anticipated, but actually kind of does make sense. You see him pulling away from guys. He gets those kind of doubles when they're there. I struggle where to rank him because I really like him and I really like his film. It's just that it's the heart versus head thing going in here where someone's like, okay, I got to consider his age, got to consider the tread on his tires, and you got to keep that into my factor. So that's why I knocked him down a little bit, but I do really like him.
2 stats you throw out about Blake Corum in the Beast Dane that I thought were really important. 1, 24 runs of 20-plus yards over the past 2 seasons. So what Nate's talking about with that ability to pull away, you saw that consistently. I mean, these are explosive plays that he's putting on tape. On the negative side, though, size at running back, we've seen short guys succeed. 3rd percentile arm length which Dane, you said really shows up in pass protection. He's just not going to be able to get to certain guys because of how small he is in that area. So even if it doesn't affect him as a runner because he plays bigger than his size, there may be other aspects to Corum's game where that lack of length and lack of size is going to show up in negative ways.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think what Nate was saying about Corum as a pass catcher, more dump off option than anything else, but he showed at least enough where I'm not too worried about it. I think he could be a fine pass catcher. But yeah, pass protection, he has a lot of what you want in terms of his mentality to be a really functional pass protector. But physically, that's where he falls short a little bit, and he knows it too. There are times where he will leave his feet way too early because he knows he has to compensate for that lack of length, and sometimes that'll backfire. And so, yeah, that's a question mark for him. I was encouraged by his testing, 6'8", 3 cone for Corum, and yeah, he is only 205 pounds. But you figure he's under 5'8", so he has some stockiness.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
But and he's not going to be a necessarily push the pile guy either. Yeah. So yeah, there's and I agree with almost everything Nate said. So I think we see the player similar. It's just where exactly do you nail down? How does he stack with the rest of these running backs? It's and I just want to add in here. It's funny talking to teams about these running backs. You have a completely different order from team to team. Running back 2 for one team is running back 8 for another. It's these guys are so closely graded together, but the actual stacking of these players is all over the map, and that's been really interesting to kind of parse as you kind of get feedback from teams on these guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if Corum's the 2nd running back drafted or the 7th quarterback or running back drafted. It really wouldn't be that surprising.
This group specifically, it almost feels like what we've talked about with receivers over the last few years, where even if they play the same position, you got a guy who's 205, you got a guy who's 235, you got Estime from Notre Dame who's like 255. Even though they're all running backs, stylistically, it just feels like this draft specifically has a wider range than some of the ones in recent memory.
The pass protection thing too that Dane brought up, that's going to determine some of these landing spots too. So some teams are like, we need a 1st and 2nd down back, and some teams are like, we need a guy that can play passing downs. And then Sean Payton's going to go, can they run choice routes? Like that's like, but seriously, that's what he looks at for his backs. It's like, are you going to have upside there? Because that's what he wants. But the pass protection stuff is huge, and that's another thing. I actually, I should have mentioned it with this is why I like Braelon Allen. Was he has good pass pro upside, and I've seen him with good eyes, and he shows some intelligence there for such a young age, and he's willing to meet it. He got better, which most backs do throughout his career. So I did want to mention that too with him before we move on.
He has the body for it, and that's key that you said upside, because most college running backs can't pass protect. They're not very good at it. But once they get to the NFL, it's something they have to get better and better at. And that's a good point. Braelon Allen has, I think, the chops, the size, the strength to at least get better in that area.
2 more running backs I wanted to talk about, just because you guys are very far apart on them, and we really haven't spent much time on this position. Trey Benson from Florida State, Nate, you have him inside your top 50. I think he's your 2nd running back or 1st running back.
He's my 1st running back.
So he's your number 1 running back. And
I'm stunned too.
He's inside your top 50. He's the only running back inside your top 50. Dane, you have him 81st on your big board. He's running back 3, but there is a pretty significant gap there. Nate, what about watching Trey Benson from Florida State kind of encourage you to push him up that high?
It's the explosive playability and better vision than I gave him credit for maybe during the season. And once I watched him more extended snaps, he's been part of a rotation. He has injuries, but he doesn't have like overwhelming touches. And so you're okay. Why is that? Maybe because of some of the injuries. We're trying to ease the workload. Other talented guys trying to figure that out. More I watched him, I just see big playability. He can create angles that other guys can't. But he also he's willing to work between the tackles. A lot of guys, this is why I've always never been an ETN guy, is because how much he bounces stuff. And there's so much in between the tackles he lets up. Benson can bounce stuff, but then he will ride a fullback. He will run in duo and work on a linebacker and do all those things that I like to see from my backs. So he really grew on me. Even if he doesn't have the most overwhelming production, he was very efficient and explosive when he did have the ball. I also think his hands are good. He has some highlight reel type catches, like stuff where he's adjusting back shoulders and everything. So I think he has upside in that area, even if some of it's a little bit unproven at this point in time. But he has true 3-down back to me with explosive play ability. If you can create a touchdown out of nothing, or take a single, make it a home run, take a single, make it a double, and you can catch, I'm really going to prop you up, and have size as well, where I can think he can take 20 touches in the game that he needs to. So might not be for everyone. I just think his best football is ahead of him, and he just has so much explosive play and 3-down ability that I really like.
Yeah, and I agree with most of what you said. My big hang up with Benson is I just don't think he's a really instinctive back. I think he has there are areas of his game, especially his burst, his bat. Like, he finds ways to stay on his feet and stay balanced that are just defy gravity. His contact balance is crazy. And he did make a lot more plays as a pass catcher this past year. He was the only player in college football that had an 80-yard run and an 80-yard catch this past season in all of college football. So he has a lot of big plays to him. There's no doubt about it. Injuries with him, he had the major knee injury when he was at Oregon before he transferred to Florida State. They didn't really rely on him to be the bell cow. And so, I mean, he only had one game of over 100 yards rushing this past year. So he had good production. He averaged, I think, 5.8 yards per carry. So he had good production, but he wasn't asked to be the guy. He wasn't asked to carry the ball, 18, 20 times a game. He only had 150 so odd carries the entire season. So I think, can he do more? Yes, I think he can. How much more? And then I do some of the vision, some of the run instincts, it kind of bothered me a little bit. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Melvin Gordon, where you see the ability, you see the talent. Wasn't always, I don't know. The lack of instincts kind of had me hitting pause a little bit, but I still really like him. I still think he's a day 2 pick and a guy that can be a productive NFL back. Just some of the question marks gave me a little bit of reservation.
Yeah. Let's get to the offensive tackles here. Another group that we haven't really dug into that deep, but there's so many big names, so many guys who go in the first round. Dane, yours, not surprisingly, the one you had the most trouble with in this process was Amarius Mims from Georgia. He of the 8 overall starts that you have at 19 on your big board. Was it just the lack of time on the field for Mims, or were there actual elements of his game that also made it a little bit more difficult for you to pin down what he is?
I didn't have enough tape for me to even know that. I mean, that's the thing. There's not enough body of work to really pinpoint, all right, this is exactly where he needs to get better. So let me express my just total naivete here and just ignorance.
Why is he a top 20 prospect then? Is it just because of how he's built and the way he moves? Like, that's what we're doing with this?
Yeah. It's strictly looking at
the question.
And there's enough like solid tape that you're like, okay, we can project this. Yeah.
The fact that he was as good as he was, having so little experience. So just naturally, he was that good. Gives me a lot of optimism that, okay, once you get him with an offensive line coach and talking with Duke Manyweather, who he has been working with the past few months down there in Dallas and in Frisco, just talking with him about, okay, specifically the fundamentals that they're working on and where he needs to get better. But I mean, he stressed to me, he's like, Dane, I've never worked with somebody like this. The size, the movements, the ability, it's just rare. And so you draft him with the understanding that it's going to take a little bit of time, but he has, and I think there's a difference between being inexperienced and being raw. I think he's more inexperienced than he is truly raw, because I think there's a lot of natural ability there. It's just, but again, it does take a leap of faith when you're talking about a guy with 8 starts. But just the fact, when you throw on the Ohio State game from last year and his first career start ever, and he was that good, it's like, I can't eliminate that from my mind. And it's like, okay, I want to bet on this in the right situation. If I need to tackle tomorrow, I'm not drafting him top 20. If I can be willing to be a little bit patient, and hopefully he starts for me. I mean, think about Broderick Jones last year for the Steelers. They drafted him 14th maybe overall in the draft last year, and he got some action, but he wasn't a down-to-down starter for them the entire year. And so Mims is even, maybe even need a little bit more time than that. So you have to be comfortable with that aspect of, I'm not quite sure how many games he's going to start for us as a rookie, but long-term thinking, really excited about what he's going to be for us.
Another encouraging part of this with these guys who are a little bit more projects or incompletes, I think that's the word you use when talking about his college career. Yeah. Smart guy, like very good student, maturity concerns nowhere to be found. It was somebody who has a long way to go. I think that's probably worth taking into consideration if you're some of these teams about Mims.
And his teammates speak highly of him. Yeah, they really like. I mean, Van Pran, I included this in his report, but Van Pran, the center for Georgia, who will be a 3rd, 4th round pick, he summed it up. He's like, listen, you don't need all the reps in the world when you have these gifts from God. He's like, he's just that good. And sometimes it's as simple as that. Now, it won't always be pretty in going up against NFL level defensive tackles and defensive ends in the NFL. So I'm not going to say it's going to be all perfect for him. There will be rough patches, and that does complicate where exactly you draft him. But when I'm stacking these prospects, I just had a hard time ranking him outside the top 20. And 2 years from now, when we look back, I might look completely wrong on that, but I'm willing to bet on those traits and say this guy's just built different, and as long as he stays focused, I think we've got a real player here.
Nate, you have him pretty much in a similar range. So I think a lot of this conversation applies to how you have Mims ranked and probably how you've thought about him. Your guy here.
He has as much, I was going to say, but he has as much as upside in this draft as anyone.
Sure.
And these quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison, all these guys we've praised and stuff, like he has that upside. So I'm totally with Dane here. Dane's the one that maybe put eyes on him last summer, and I've kept an eye on him throughout the year. It's one of those, I love that lines. He's not raw. He's just inexperienced, because you watch him play. This is not a total project. It's just going to take time. It's not an overhaul. We have to start from scratch. You're more like step 2 with him, but shoot, the upside with him is just tremendous.
The offensive tackle you wanted to talk about, Nate, is a seasoned veteran compared to Amarius Mims with his 15 career starts, and that's Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. You have him at 37 on your big board. Dane has him at 27, so pretty much in a similar range, but this is another guy who just hasn't played a ton of football, but has overwhelming physical talent. So when you were studying Guyton, what were some of the sticking points to you where you just weren't really sure what to make of him?
I'll start with positives. There's not a lot of guys, just like we talked about Mims, and this is speaking to this offensive line class. There's not a lot of guys that are built like this that can move like this. That is the number one thing that is in his favor, moving in space, adjusting in space. Just that upside is what's so appealing with him. There's some
34.5-inch vertical leap at 325 pounds. Yeah. Guy's an athlete.
He's a real athlete. He, to me, is more, even with more starts, even with double the starts of Mims, is more of a project than Mims, to me. I think there is, especially pass sets are inconsistent. His technique is just kind of all over the place right now. I also think that even he plays a little upright for my liking, and that kind of can cause some issues in the run game and pass game. So that's what kind of has kept me from really putting him over the top, where I'm like, oh yeah, I could see him with some other guys that I have kind of sneaking into the first round. I think he does have that talent to go in the first round. I've just started hedging a bit, but I'm like, I just wanted to see a little bit more of realistic theory, I guess, like actual practice of him doing it, as opposed to what I can see. And maybe some of the reps at the Senior Bowl had me a little concerned, where I just saw some one-on-ones and stuff where just there's some good and bad with that. So Guyton, I could see him easily going into the first round. I just have more concerns and think of him as more of a project than I do maybe some of the other guys in this tier.
He just hasn't played a lot of offensive tackle, Dane, right? I mean, this is a guy who was an H-back at TCU before he transferred to Oklahoma. So we're talking about only a couple seasons. And 2023 was his first time as a full-time starter at right tackle.
And there's questions about, okay, why right tackle and not left tackle? Because Oklahoma lost both their tackles, and he stayed at right tackle instead of moving to the left side. And I think he's the athlete. There's not any question about that. But yeah, no, it's interesting listening to the Oklahoma coaches talk about him. They rave about how different he is movement wise, just the way that he can, reach certain blocks that others can't. But in terms of the tape and functional offensive tackle play, I agree with Nate. He's behind Mims in terms of his fundamentals, in terms of consistency. And, there's a lot of times where you see this really balanced player in space, but he falls off balance, or, his timing isn't right. And so it doesn't matter if you have all the tools if you're not playing on time, if you're not playing on schedule. And that's something that he needs to work on when he gets to the next level. But with that said, there's just only so many guys that have the gifts that he does. That has, watching him on lead runs and seeing him on the outside running 20 yards down the field as a pull blocker. My goodness, this guy is. If you're a safety and see this guy barreling towards you, I don't blame you when you kind of just hide, because this guy is a monster out in space. But he's interesting because all the talent's there. But what's the projection? Is it going to be a year before he's ready to start for you? And that's why, I think he'd be projecting the Cowboys at 24. They really need someone kind of right now. It doesn't on one end I think it makes sense, but on another it doesn't. And so Guyton's a tough guy to project because I think it will take a little bit of time for him.
The two teams in that general range that you could talk yourself into them drafting a tackle that they wouldn't have to play right away. And I should have done more thinking about this, but two I'd throw out. Philly, just as some sort of succession plan to Lane Johnson. He's 33, and obviously the development plan is fantastic there. And the other team in that range, Rasheed Walker played well enough for the Packers last year where I don't think if you drafted a tackle in the first round, he would have to play on day one. Those are the two teams that you could talk yourself into them drafting a tackle, and they don't necessarily have a day one, week one need at the position.
And those are teams that are willing to chill, like willing Eagles, Packers. They're willing to do that and let their guys sit stuff. So that makes a lot of sense.
The other team, the other guy you threw out, Nate, was Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State.
Yeah.
I'm curious why, because he's somebody, he has a ton of work, and based on your descriptions of him and what you wrote about him on your big board, it seems like you like him. So what about him was difficult for you? About Fuaga?
I couldn't get over the top with him. I like him, and I just couldn't love him. And I don't know what it was.
Right there with you.
And okay, good. I just want to maybe just talk this out. I want to use a podcast that I get paid for. Just go through my brain here.
This is scouting therapy. This is what the athletic football show has become.
He fires off the ball. He gets to the second level. He will get into double teams from the right tackle position, Fuaga, with their right guard, and just drive guys. It's translatable stuff too, because what Oregon State does. His pass sets, I wouldn't say he's okay as a pass protector, but it's not bad. It's just that there's some limitations. I think he's a little stiff-hipped at times where he can't open up like you'd like to see him against better guys. But he moves well, but then he falls off the block on the linebacker sometimes. He doesn't adjust well. So that agility I just brought up in pass protection, it shows up in the run game in space. So it's like he does these things within 2 to 3 yards that I really like. It's the 4 to 5 yard stuff on either end that I'm like, gets me scared. And when Dane started talking, I've seen others say maybe he's better at a guard, and that's made me a little more comfortable with him. But it's different than a Barton or other guys that I have a little bit higher, Graham Barton or stuff, is that those guys, I'm like, yeah, I could see them staying at tackle. Fuaga, I'm really trying to go, no, he's a guard. And so the tackle's just in a pinch, as opposed to which one is he best at? It's more like, oh, I'm really seeing him at guard. So it's limited my upside with him, even if I do like him. So I just kind of, I've just struggled with how high I wanted to put that.
Explosive, a little stiff.
Yeah.
He lacks twitch for those easy recoveries. There's no doubt about that. Duke Manyweather compared him to Mike Iupati when he was.
I was going to bring that up,
and that's a good one.
Blast from the past. I included that in my report because I really liked it. I think it makes a ton of sense. A guy that played a lot of guard, and I think there are a lot of teams not a lot of teams, but there are some teams that have him as a guard. I think most teams that I've talked to have him as a right tackle. So again, we're talking about a question: can he play the left side, or is he a right tackle, maybe a guard? That type of prospect that might limit where you go in the top 20 if you're worried about left tackle flexibility. But not having those easy recoveries. And I think this is a guy that tries to get that head start. He had 6 false starts this year because he is a guy that isn't the longest. He has 33-inch arms. Fuaga has good range, but not great range. He is a guy that wants to get that head start and get his hands on you, because once he gets his hands on you, he can maul you, and that's why he's so good in the run game. But it's that initial, okay, I have to get to you first, and that doesn't know, it's not always the case with him. So yeah, he is tough. He ended up 17 for me, something like that. Where did he finish for you on your board, Nate?
18.
Yeah, you guys are right in the same range on him, which is why I was curious that you mentioned him, Nate, because it just feels like you're in line with a lot of people, but I understand it's more about the ceiling than it is what he can be as his floor. And Ayupati is an interesting name because Ayupati was the 17th overall pick, and he was somebody who played tackle and then moved inside just because he was powerful, but that he really was stiff. He just wasn't a guy who had a lot of flexibility when you watched his game. And I think that's worth mentioning because I'm sure we have some listeners that don't remember the 2010 NFL draft.
Hey, there might be.
Is it really 2010?
I know, that's why I was trying to remember the year too. I know. The recover thing is so key. What Dane says, that's everything at tackle play is how you recover. Some guys it's with length, some guys they're freak athletes, some guys are just incredible technicians, some guys with balance, and his is what Dane is saying. He gets off, his technique's pretty sound. Where's the upside? Like if he's already losing that way at this point with this many starts, that's where it's like, okay, I can't really see him surviving extended periods. He might be able to, but I just have some more questions than maybe others do. I know that's it's funny you say that. Like you're like, yeah, we have him graded the same. It's a first round grade near it, like but it's still just I just couldn't get over the top with him.
I like that though. I like that they're all these guys that we're going to talk about. They're all over the place. Some of them you guys have ranked the same decidedly in the first round. And as we move to guard here, it's on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Dane, your guard that you wanted to talk about was Mason McCormick from South Dakota State. He is the only player that we're going to talk about on this list that is outside of your top 100. You had him slated as a 4th round pick. And I feel like the fact that you wanted to talk about him here and he's outside your top 100 means that he is stuck in your mind through this process in a way that other guys may not have. What about Mason McCormick do you think justifies this sort of conversation and long look?
So watching him on tape, McCormick at South Dakota State, I mean, whenever you watch a lower level, FCS, Division II, Division III, you're looking, especially offensive line, you want to see that guy just dominate and really overwhelm the guy he's going up against. And when you throw on South Dakota State with McCormick, he would do that from time to time, but he was so stiff, painfully stiff with his movements. And then I want to go to the Shrine, East West Shrine Bowl in Frisco this year. I'm standing on the sidelines watching Mason McCormick just dominate from start to finish. So tape grade was not great. And then I see him in person during this All-Star game dominate. And then he goes to the combine and looks really good. I'm like, where'd this stiff athlete that I watched on tape? Where did he go? It doesn't make any sense. And so it's a tough guy to come to grips with. Okay, what's the final grade? Because the tape says one thing, the All-Star game, the pre-draft process says another. I mean, there's a lot to like about him. He literally played in 70 games in college. This guy's got a lot of experience. Even if most of it was FCS, he has a lot of experience. I think he's going to be like a day one backup, and then it's just okay, how long before he can earn a starting reps and get more regular action, either guard spot. But I don't know. He was hard to project because, again, the tape said one thing, and what I saw with my own eyes at the All-Star game and the Combine said something different.
There's so many positives in the report that you wrote, and both physical and intangible aspects to his game. As the left guard for South Dakota State, he's making checks at the line of scrimmage. And that's what they put on him because of what he can do mentally. And if you look at the testing numbers, if you look at his relative athletic score, which is the number that Kenley Platt puts out, if you guys have not followed him on Twitter, it's a really interesting visual for what these guys look like physically. Mason McCormick, according to that metric, finished 7th among 1,500 guards that have tested since 1987. 7th. So it's not just that he's a good athlete, it's that his testing numbers at guard were historic. So I can understand where this has become a little bit complicated for you.
That's it. Multi-year captain. The intangibles are awesome. Really enjoyed talking to him at the Shrine game and then at the Combine. Mature kid, but yeah, it's tough to marry that. And because of that tape, because at the end of the day, I'm going to trust the tape. at the end of the day, I couldn't put him in my top 100. But if he ends up going in the third round, I wouldn't be totally shocked because of that athletic profile you talked about. But still, at the end of the day, the tape didn't show a top 100 player. I still think he's going to be a good pro. I think he's going to be a solid backup and a guy that if he gets into a starting lineup, I wouldn't be surprised. But to take him in top 100, me personally, I couldn't get there.
You didn't have him in your top 100 either, Nate. Do you have similar thoughts after watching?
Fourth rounder to me. I have nothing really to add other than South Dakota State's one of my favorite offenses to watch, college or NFL.
Just Tucker Kraft love.
Tucker Kraft from last year, and even a couple years before that, I'm trying to remember. But their offensive coordinator, Zach Lujan, he just got
Pierre
hired.
Strong, the running back.
Yeah, Pierre Strong. That's who it was. Thank you. Yes. I knew I watched it a couple years ago, but their Zach Lujan, their offensive coordinator, just got hired by Northwestern. So check him out in the Big Ten. But he does some good stuff. I keep an eye on him. He's a riser. So that's why I got to add to that McCormick discussion, because I'm with Dane. Did not see those testing numbers. And actually, the guy I'm about to talk about is kind of a similar discussion. So.
Yours was Cooper Beebe at guard, Nate, from Kansas State. You have him at 46 overall on your big board. Dane has him at 38. Your comp to him on your big board on Yahoo was SpongeBob SquarePants because of the way that Cooper Beebe is built. 31.5-inch arms for my guy Cooper Beebe at like 330 pounds. What did you make of Cooper Beebe's tape from Kansas State?
I like him because he's some technician. He's got some mauler to him. Did not see these testing numbers that he had on film. I thought he was going to have maybe some limitations. He tested like a good athlete. And that's where it's kind of, I have no excuses other than the short arms for him. I could see this guy as a good starting guard. It's just those short arms, and the SpongeBob SquarePants comparisons come for this because he's so broad chested and he's strong and everything. It's just that you don't really see with that type of arm length kind of survive. It's a huge outlier.
Typically, we talk about guys go from tackle to guard because they don't have 33-inch arms. Yeah. He might have to go from guard to center because he doesn't have 32-inch arms.
And that's where exactly it's like, can he survive a guard? No, then he's a center only. And then that, limits his upside how high I can put him on the board. I think this guy's a starter. Like, he is a starter somewhere, somehow. But is that only at center, or is that with guard versatility? I'm going to give him a shot at guard because I really like his tape. Like I said, he has some strength to him. He's got plenty of athleticism. He's got some good technique already. I think he's smart. Like, he just does a lot of things well. It's just the arm length. That is the big thing that is just keeping me from bumping him up even more, because I think we have him slotted about the same 38, 46, probably the same kind of grade. So, but yeah, just this guy, I could see him working in the NFL. I just have to keep that in my mind that he would be an outlier.
Dang, you had him a lot of left tackle. I mean, with those arms in this economy, he was playing left tackle.
Did he play both tackle spots for an entire season before moving to guard full time his last year?
Yes.
Yep, that's it. Well, yeah, he played.
It's funny.
His red shirt, and then it was right tackle, then left tackle, and then left guard last 2 years. Mixed in some right tackle this past season because of injuries. You're not really projecting him as true 5-position versatility, but I think it does speak to how smart he is, that he was able to make these switches really without any issues. I 100% agree. I think center might actually end up being his best position, and he doesn't have any in-game reps there, but he did practice there. I know he was their backup center. During spring practices, he was working out at center. I'm encouraged by over the last 2 years, he only had one holding penalty, which obviously there's more to it than just arm length with that. But he
can't get to anybody. That's the problem. He actually can't grab onto anybody.
It speaks to his athleticism, though, like that he can keep his feet on it. Yeah. No, it's because
they when you watch them run the football, a lot of times they're running it behind him and they're having success. And it's. He's the kind of the opposite of McCormick, where with Beebe, you're just kind of trusting the tape and saying, okay, it was great that he tested as well as he did, but I'm just going to trust the tape and say, like, this is a good player that whether it's pass protection or run blocking, he executes, he gets the job done. And I don't know, Kansas State Cody Whitehair, and I mean they seem to have Cody
Whitehair's name, short arm guy, left tackle in college,
coached well,
had a couple really good seasons. Yeah, they've just done a decent job of pumping those guys out.
Yeah. It's just the testing it was basically like me just going like, all right, you got no excuses. You like him, screw it. Just give him this grade because this is what you think of him. That's what it was. It was like I almost just needed to see that. And yeah, like Dane's saying, you got to trust the tape with him, and because he gets it done. And it's always there week in, week out.
All right. I'm very excited about this next one because you guys are further apart on this guy than pretty much anyone else that we're going to talk about in this process. The edge rusher that you had, Dane, was Darius Robinson from Mizzou. You have him at 35 on your big board. Nate has him at 62 on his big board. So let's dig into this. Dane, I'm going to let you make your case first. Why 35th overall on your big board for Darius Robinson, who has some tweener concerns, a lot to dig through with him in his profile?
Yeah, and I think it starts with watching, because he was supposed to be in last year's draft, and then at the last minute he decided to take advantage of the COVID year and come back to Missouri for his 5th season. And if he comes out last year, he's probably a mid-day 3 pick because he was playing mostly defensive tackle. He comes back to Missouri for this 5th year, this past year, and they work him more as an edge rusher. And I mean, he's 6'5", 285. He looks more like an interior player. But working him at defensive end, a lot of tackles could not handle the power and some of the quickness that he had. Now, his 40 doesn't look great. He ran a 4.9, and so you don't want him running 40 yards. But in a short area with that power, with those heavy hands, watching him mid-season, it was like, okay, this is a different player. I don't know if it's just the shift to edge rusher, but whatever it is, this is a different player. He's playing much differently than the player I saw last year. And then listening to Kirby Smart talking about their matchup with Missouri, he singled out Darius Robinson, and he's like, listen, number 6 is a problem. That's our number 1 thing we have to take care of. And he was close to leading the SEC in sacks this year. I mean, he had 14 tackles for loss. I mean, he put up the production. And then at the Senior Bowl, he really gave it to everyone he went up against. A lot of those one-on-one matchups. He was actually voted the number 1 player at the Senior Bowl during practices by his peers, by the other players that were there. So you factor in that. You factor in a lot of people think he's going to go in the first round. Some people think he's going to be a top 30 pick, somewhere in the 20s. I didn't quite see him as a first-round player. I saw him more as that early to mid-second round type of guy. But I don't know. There's a little bit of, he's going to be a base end at worst. And it's like, okay, what else more than that can he be? I have question marks there. But I'm just encouraged by what he put on film this season.
In the Beast, you talked about how there's a lack of speed and even footwork to capture the corner. When you were watching him at the Senior Bowl, did you see a little bit more of that, or was it just more pronounced examples of the strengths that you had seen on tape?
It was better examples of him using his hands to answer what blockers were giving him. So he's not going to cleanly beat NFL tackles around the corner very often. That's just not his game. But the way he can use his length and his hands to really tie up blockers, that's what I saw standing right there in Mobile watching these one-on-ones. And he did it to Tyler Guyton. He did it consistently against who he was going up against. And so I think there is more know-how there than maybe I gave him credit for on tape. That Senior Bowl is a perfect opportunity to show that. So I just, the strength that he has in his body, in the length, he has 34.5-inch arms. He has almost 11-inch hands. He's just a big, powerful guy. And the more he learned, the jump he took from the 2022 tape to the 2023 tape, and then the jumps he made throughout the season, and then during the pre-draft process, just gives me optimism that he'll continue to take coaching and apply it and get better, even if I do have questions about ultimately what his ceiling is as a pro.
Rave reviews about his leadership, which is not surprised. At the University of Missouri, we just do nothing but pump out quality people. So I'm not surprised to hear that at all. Nate, you are not there on Darius Robinson. You had 62 on your big board. What are you not seeing with Robinson that maybe some other people are?
Yeah, I just don't know if he can make a living on the edge and as a 3-down guy. I think he's a move around guy. There's a role for him in the NFL. It's just that I think his landing spot will determine a lot, and that limits how high I can kind of put him on my board. Kind of like his best path forward is a Charles Omenihu kind of guy, where it's okay, does a little outside, sub packages, moves inside. If you're in a 3-4 type defense, I know no one's in the 3-4 normally, but you're a 4-eye, kind of a defensive end that's technically in between, like a defensive tackle, better as a 2-gap type. So I just think the testing numbers show this, and even what I saw when I was watching him is that lack of twitch. He is strength, and he has the length, and he has strong hands. It's just like, okay, what's next? He had the production, but I thought some of those were cheapy sacks. Or late sacks later as he kind of worked after, and not those ones that are insta wins. But that's the thing. He's not getting drafted to win that way. So that's why I'm not like dinging him too much. I don't know where to slot kind of a late bloomer, a guy that doesn't flash the high pass rushing upside, but I do think he'll contribute, and kind of a tweener. And so I just don't know. I think there's a role for him, but I think it's more he's a super role player than a guy that I'm going to invest super highly in. So that's where I ended up, more of like a late second, early third type of grade for me. So just a little bit, maybe about a half tier below what Dane was saying. And I just don't know what his upside is. I think there's some alarm bells for me with the testing, with the late bloomerness that just kind of kept me from getting there.
That's that range of the draft. Let's say 25 to 45.
Take your flavor.
There's a graveyard of tweeners over the last 10 years. And if you look at guys drafted in that range, people that come to mind, LJ Collier, Taco Charlton, Braelon Speaks. And obviously there's difference. Collier was 6'2.5". You're talking about Robinson as extreme length. There are nuances between that are important to consider, but we've seen a lot of tweeners taken in the back half of the first round or early in the second round that have not worked out for those teams. And I think I'm just a little bit scarred by some of those experiences as I think about players of that specific profile.
Yeah. If you draft Darius Robinson in the first round, there's a good chance that he doesn't live up to being, he'll be stamped a first round pick the rest of his life. There's a decent chance he doesn't live up to that. If he goes somewhere on day 2, which I think is more of should be his landing spot, then it's you. I know it's semantics. We're talking about, okay, if he goes 36 and as opposed to 30, we're talking about 6 picks. But it feels like, okay, if he's a day 2 pick, it does feel more along the lines of what should be expected of him at the next level. Because I have the same concerns about upside, exactly what he is. I think a little more hope for what he is right now, like his floor. I think he's a really solid base end, and that picking him in the 30s, that would be expensive to draft just a base end. But I do think, like I said, I'm a little more optimistic about the jump that he took over the offseason and the jump I saw during the pre-draft or from the season to the pre-draft process, to think that maybe there's just still a little bit more there, that he's a base end at worst, and then maybe could be a little bit more and moving inside the defensive tackle on sub packages. He's going to be moved around that defensive line no matter where he goes.
Nate, your guy at edge was Chop Robinson from Penn State that you had a hard time with. You guys both had him at 26 on your respective big boards. But Nate, you had a little bit, maybe a harder time going through and figuring out exactly what you think he is. What were some of the complications as you were studying Chop Robinson from Penn State?
There, you see the twitch, you see the explosiveness. Where's the finishing? Where is the actual, and I know we look at pressures and we look at all those types of things, and you want to look at all the stuff leading to the sack, and sacks can be noisy, but you gotta get close. You gotta actually be in a threatening position to hit the quarterback. And that's what I see. I love he has some good hands already. He tested how he plays. You see the twitch, you see the explosiveness, but there's so many times he wins and then loops all the way around the quarterback. Quarterback steps up and just moves away. You're not truly affecting the quarterback. You're pressuring them, making them move up, but you're not making them run and escape the pocket. So I saw a lot of that. They dropped him into coverage a whole bunch of times at Penn State too, which was okay, I like that. You could do that, but I don't think that's his best path going forward. I also think that he's neutral at best against the run. I would even say he can be explosive if he knifes inside and creates an explosive play. But I've seen tight ends, watch the West Virginia game, inline tight end, just pinning him, blocking him. And that's West Virginia. Now go against NFL tight ends. Even there's not a ton of them, but a lot of them are going to be better than that West Virginia tight end. He is a guy I'm keeping.
And they're going to be bigger than him, probably.
They're
right?
going to be bigger.
245, not long.
Strong. Yep, not the overwhelming length. So there's pass rushing juice. There's upside here. He does create some pressures, and he does have just some good hands to win right away. But it's just there's that last kind of 50% of the play I don't see enough of to where I'm take this guy top 15. He's your ace pass rusher. He has that upside. But it's just it's a lot of scariness where I see more as a DPR type, like a Yannick Ngakoue type, maybe that type of tier of player too.
Yannick Ngakoue's a third-round pick.
Third rounder. Yeah.
Without looking it up, Nate, how many tackles? And he started 10 games this year. How many tackles do you think he had?
I almost included this, so I want to say he had 17,
15.
That's
indicative of him against the run.
Show.
Yeah. He's making plays in the backfield, but a lot of times, and that's he is definitely a projection. I was getting text from scouts who Because so after the draft or after the season's over, teams have draft meetings, and how a lot of teams do it, they'll have the area scout present a player to the room, and then they watch the film, and they talk about it, vote on it, all that stuff. And they're watching for this team. They're watching Chop Robinson. I had the one scout that's Chop Robinson wasn't his area. He's watching him, and it must have been a good cut up because he's like, why is this guy not a top 10 pick? He's like, I don't understand. Like they
showed all 4 sacks and like all the pressures that he had. Yeah,
watched him against Iowa in the first quarter against Michigan. Because if you watch those,
oh my god,
yeah, you watch those and you're like, okay, yeah, he's one of the best players in this draft. But the full body of work leaves you a little bit underwhelmed. So, but again, if I'm going to sell Chop Robinson, he has something that some of these other pass rushers don't, and that's that quick first step. That is a devastating thing for an edge rusher, and it's a distinguishing trait that maybe some of these other edge rushers don't have. So if I'm going to sell him, it's all about that first step, and for a team, that might be enough to draft him even in the top 20. It wouldn't be too surprising.
Some notable notes and numbers from the B-Stain about Chop Robinson, I think, illustrate a lot of this. 1.53 10-yard split, which is like 97th percentile for edge players, just absolutely ridiculous.
At 254.
At 254. And you mentioned this, Nate. Pass rush win rate was 10th in the country for Chop Robinson, which is not necessarily surprising. You have that quick first step. He's got some decent moves off the line of scrimmage, but only had 4 sacks. And then, Dane, the other thing you threw out, only 30 snaps a game. So there's just so many different competing factors when you're trying to figure out what he is, what his ceiling is. And I completely understand these guys that explosive off the line of scrimmage, but if you can't convert speed to power or you have no power in your game, what do you end up being? And it seems like that's going to be the huge question for him.
Yep. There's no doubt. And so he's an easy player to like, hard player to love. And that's why I couldn't give him a firm first round grade. I had 20 firm first round grades. He was just outside of that as more of that late 1, early 2 type of grade. But when you have that first step that he does and you're a pass rusher, you're going to go. It's just a matter of, okay, what team feels is it going to be the Cardinals at 27 or 28, or which team is it going to be in the 20s? That feels like the most likely landing spot for him.
You are a Philadelphia Eagle, Chop Robinson.
It's possible. Sure.
That's how it feels. Let's get to the defensive tackles here, because it's when I asked you for names on this one, Dane, you pretty much just said all of them. All of the guys on day 2 are worth discussing here. This group specifically at defensive tackle, I think, has the biggest gaps for both of you of any position group. Pretty much every single one of these guys that's a second, third, fourth round pick, you guys are very far apart on. So the first guy here is T'Vondre Sweat from Texas. Dane, you have him outside of your top 100 now, but that is after he was arrested for DWI earlier this month. So on a football level, you probably have him more as a borderline second, third round pick. But even that is a gap between where Nate has him. He has him at 42 on his big board at Yahoo with T'Vondre Sweat. So let's just talk about the football stuff first, Dane. What about T'Vondre Sweat's game kind of gives you pause about how high you wanted to move him and what he can be in the NFL?
Well, there is the off-field stuff. That is what it is. Just the fact that you're getting a DWI 3 weeks before the draft is the most audible ring, just red flag. I mean, it is tough to overcome that, and especially for a guy that has a little bit of a background with this stuff. I mean, he was open with teams about his partying as an underclassman, but it's all behind him, and he talking to scouts, they said he did a worthwhile job convincing them that he turned over a new leaf as a senior, and it showed in his play, because his senior year looked totally different than what he did in 2022. He looked like a dominant player this past season, and it's like, okay, he has turned the page. He's just a more mature player, but then this happens, and the DWI happens, and it's like, okay, what do we believe with this guy? The other thing that's more football related, but still a question mark, is the weight. For the national championship game, or the playoff game against Washington, the college football playoffs, the semifinal, he was pushing 390. And so this is a guy that, like, you just have to worry about. He got down to 366 for the combine. He did not weigh in at the Senior Bowl, which was a red flag then, red flag now. He got down to 366 for the combine. He was 367 a couple weeks later for the pro day. but you're going to have to always worry about the weight with him. And can he stay conditioned? Can he stay focused? Can he stay locked in? And so a lot of these questions are things that have not necessarily, can he defeat a double team? I mean, it's more of just the off-field stuff and staying focused. But on the field, there's a lot to like. I mean, he is, for a guy that's 366, he doesn't look overweight. Like he carries it well because he just has the bone structure and the body type. One scout compared it to Donkey Kong just beating the snot out of Mario. Just like it's what it looks like going up against some of these Big 12 offensive linemen. He is a big dude who has a lot of ability, and we saw more of it this season in 2023 than we ever did with any of his underclassmen tape, which again is another, we talked about with Darius Robinson. Why did it take your 5th year for you to really break out? Why is it, okay, you turned it on all of a sudden? So there's a lot of question marks, but man, he has ability that a lot of guys don't.
Nate, it feels like your ranking of T'Vondre Sweat is mostly the flashes on the field that you see. It's those high-end moments where maybe you're not considering some of the off-field stuff quite as much when you're looking at where he slots in.
That's it. It's not just a big, oversized nose tackle that just leans on guys and it's like, oh, he's plugging. He's got hand usage. He has some pass rush ability. Like he could play all 3 downs. You maybe not want him to, but it's not like he's a total outlier out there where you're like, oh, he's not getting any juice. You get him singled up with a center, he's hand swiping him back, just truly knocking him a gap over. So I like his film better than Jordan Davis, who was drafted high just a couple of years ago. Same type of player as far as body type and all the weight issues and everything. And like Dane says, he carries it very well. But all this stuff, like Dane's saying, I of course put in my big board before the DUI hit. So that was not very fun to see. We got the note in at least. But the senior push is always an alarm bell. That especially if it's not because, oh, he hasn't figured out how to play, when it's practice habits, it's off field stuff and everything. That's where it's concerning. It's all of a sudden he goes, oh shoot, the draft's next year. All right, I got to turn it on. But then all of a sudden you're going to get paid in the NFL. The NFL is harder than college because it's your job. It's every day you have to show up. Week 14, week 15, week 16. You could lose 7 games in a row. And guess what? You're getting paid. You better play. That's your resume now. And so that's the fact that he's heavier than his listed weight as the season went along. That's like impossible. Guys lose so much weight during the season. So that's huge red flags. But the thing is, you watch him on the field and you're like, oh my God, this guy can be a true, almost 3 down nose tackle, which are hard to find. And every team is looking for a plugger if they want to play all this 2 high defenses. And there's not a lot of these types of guys in this draft. They're mostly 3 techs or mostly gap shooting types. So he's a different flavor. I love his film, but then it's just all the off-field concerns. It's like, I might have him as a top 50 guy, but it's one of those where I'm with Dane, where it's like, I'm not touching him until day 3 because of that stuff.
Okay. Another guy that you guys are pretty far apart on, but we're flipping it here. Dane has him at 51 on his big board. Nate, you didn't even have him in your top 100. Was Ruke, let me do this. Ohorhoro?
Ohorhoro. You sound like Scooby-Doo, kind of.
Yeah, Ruke Ohorhoro. It's a great name.
Yeah,
from Clemson.
It's a dog with peanut butter in his mouth. Yeah.
Dane, you had him at 51, borderline second or third round pick. Nate, you did not have him on your big board at all. Nate, I'm going to let you go first here.
Okay.
What about Ohorhoro kind of scared you off in the process?
I don't know what he is. I just didn't see a lot of the juice I was expecting, and I didn't see the plugger, like where I'm like seeing where he's holding up and doing it. He was a tweener as far as play style, and that I couldn't get all the way there with him. I kept him off the board completely. I look at him as an early 4th rounder. He's probably like 105. Like if we're going that deep, I don't go.
Still though, very big gap between 105 and 51.
Yes. I just couldn't get all the way there with him where I can figure out his role. I wanted to just see more. I know he has talent, and I know his body type, again, is just kind of that 290, he's a mid 290 type of guy. Mm-hmm. Again, if you're going to be that type, I want you to see more actual explosive play with it, explosive production with it, even if he had some. But I was expecting a little bit more overwhelmingness. I was a little harsh on him because I think maybe I was just underwhelmed overall when I watched him, like where I was just like, I think he's fine. I think he is a pretty good athlete as well. Just couldn't get there with his play style.
His testing numbers, Dane, were very explosive, even if that does not show up on tape.
Well, and that's, as I just got done saying, trust the tape. This is one of those cases where I'm kind of trusting the upside and the talent that he has, because Yeah, 6'4", 295, and 34-inch arms. And Ruke's got a 7.39 3-cone. I mean, he was in the 4.8s in the 40-yard dash. He moves differently than most guys this size. And I still think he's just learning. Like, he's still trying to figure things out. And, that's not ideal for a fifth-year player, but he was really late to football. I mean, he didn't start playing until high school. He's a guy that born and raised in Nigeria, came over when he was young, and really just started playing. He was a wide receiver for a while. Then he really started learning defensive line. So there's a lot that he's still figuring out. But I was encouraged by him against the run. I really thought when you factor in that lateral quickness that he has, that length, the power at the point of attack, he can control gaps. I thought the pass rush production wasn't there, but I still think that he has it in him to get better. And so 51 is lofty, but at the same time, it's more of an upside pick. Thinking about how many guys look like him and move like him, there's just not many of them. And so I think that with more seasoning, more coaching, he can get there. And once you get into the 50s, that's where I'd be willing to maybe roll the dice on a guy like this. If my roster was set up where I don't need a guy to come in, make a quick impact, I can be a little patient with him. If I'm set up that way, I would be fine rolling the dice on Ruke there somewhere in that late second round range.
Feels like there are a lot of naughty evaluations at this position. Mike Hall Jr. was another guy that you guys are both, kind of split on. Nate has him at 39. Dane, you have him at 60. Another guy where he had a sack and a half in 2023, but according to you, Dane, second best pass rush win rate, another phrase I can never say, in the country at defensive tackle next to Byron Murphy. So similar.
Bueller with the snaps, just enough. Yeah. He's up there, and that's the big problem with him is he missed a lot of time, and he was a part-time player, and so it's tough. If he is drafted, I got this stat from Fran Duffy, and I can't remember it exactly. If he's drafted in the top 50, he would be we've never seen a defensive tackle this few number of snaps drafted in the top 50 before, or at least over the last 10 years. So it's a guy that just doesn't have that body of work, but he's young. He's still just 20. He won't turn 21 until June. The flashes are awesome. I mean, there's reason to be excited about him. Can he stay healthy, and can he stay on the field and not hurt you against the run? Some of the questions made me, think of him more of as a late second than an early second. But I get it. If you graded the flashes and you think about what he could be, I totally understand why he could potentially go somewhere in that early to mid second.
Yeah. It sounds like you did that, Nate. You graded the flashes, and you're worried about what he can be, Michael.
I did graded flash. I'm a sucker for this type of player. It's explosive plays at defensive tackle. And I think that, like what Dane said, if he was a fifth-year player on this rotation, wouldn't be as optimistic as I am, but he's so young. And I understand when you're at a blue blood program like Ohio State, being on limited snaps makes me argue more for you at this young age. Oh, okay, he's going to grow to that because he's competing with other kind of blue chippers. He's explosive. I've seen him go against Joe Alt in a 4-eye technique. So showing that he can play more 3-4 DN too, which I think helps as well, as long as being his best upside is like Grady Jarrett, like 3-tech, boom, fire up the field, win right away. But it's good to see it. He's going against Joe Alt and beating him in the run game and just throwing him by and creating a play against a counter run. So that's where it's flashes. Again, like Dane just said, it's those 20, he only plays 20, 25, 30 plays a game. And you're really grading off the 4, 5, 6 flash plays and going like, okay, I'm projecting that. The fact he tested really well, maybe just go, okay, I bumped him another probably 10 spots, I think. I think he went from 49, my first big board, to 39. And really that was the testing going like, yep, I'm good with this. So just grading to that. And this is the difference between the discussion about Michael Hall. Does he go by Mike? So Mike Hall Jr. And okay, and Ohorhoro is that they age. If the other one was a redshirt sophomore coming out with that testing and the flashes he had, I'd be a lot more optimistic about him, and that's why I kept him a little lower. It's like at that age, at that school, and that's what you're just doing. So that's just kind of differing of the arguments with these two guys.
As we get to linebacker, I don't even think it's worth digging into the individual guys because you guys both had like 4 players that you wanted to talk about, and they're all stacked in a very similar range. You pretty much have all of these guys from like 80 to 100 on your board. We're talking about Tommy Eichenberg, he's off your top 100, Nate or Dane, but Nate, you have him at 89. Peyton Wilson, 98 for you, Nate, 88 for you, Dane. Trevin Wallace from Kentucky, 86 for Dane, off Nate's big board, but I'm assuming in that general range. I'm wondering, Dane, as you're looking at linebackers these days, I'm trying to listen to you throwing out 20 guys that you wanted to talk about here. Do you feel like linebacker has become one of the hardest positions, if not the hardest position to evaluate in this process, just because of what's translatable and what's not?
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example of why Eichenberg fell off my top 100 is because he didn't have a ton of coverage production, and he wasn't able to play at the Senior Bowl because he was banged up, and not showing what you can do in coverage just gives me pause, because are you a true 3-down player? I'm not sold on that with Eichenberg. I love Eichenberg as a player, as an early down player. The heart that he plays with. I mean, I felt for him at the combine when he was being asked about why he came back, and he said, "I came back to beat Michigan," and they're like, "Well, that didn't happen." He's like, "I know."
Yeah,
and it was just awkward silence. Like I felt, I was, it was painful because he cares about this stuff so much, and it's just he's an easy guy to root for. It's just the lack of playmaking ability and coverage gives me a little bit of pause, and that's why I'm not high on Jeremiah Trotter, who a lot of people think is going to be not a lot of people, but some people think is going to be a day 2 pick. But it's also why I like Trevin Wallace at Kentucky, because he is a big time athlete. 6'1", 237 pounds, ran a 4.51, and you see it on the film. I mean, he moves differently than most linebackers move. Does he have the best instincts? Does he have the best anticipation? No. That's where Eichenberg is a little more advanced. But also with Trevin Wallace, he's very, very young. He just turned 21 years old. He's still a work in progress, but he has the athleticism, and that gives me hope. And the upside is there that he can be maybe a 3-down player, or someone that you can at least trot out there and feel okay about. So it's these linebackers are tough, and Peyton Wilson's a different conversation because of the injury stuff. Yeah. And even past that, he's more of a straight line-ish kind of guy. Yeah, right. And so I don't know. He had his 3-cone was awesome, but on film he looks more like a straight line guy than a true change of direction guy. But yeah, all these linebackers in this range. I mean, Junior Colson from Michigan's a top linebacker, then Edgerrin Cooper, and then it becomes there's a gap, and then it's like, okay, I'm open for arguments about who that next linebacker off the board should be.
I feel like we're learning with linebackers, though. I think that slowly we're learning about this, because when I think of linebackers from Kentucky and guys that were fantastic athletes, and then you just drop them in, you're not sure what they are. That's what Jamin Davis was. And I just don't think guys like that are going to go in the first round, or at least shouldn't be going in the first round as often as they were, let's say, over the last decade.
No, it's gonna be a bunch of day 2 picks from now on. Feels like a linebacker.
Unless you're a true playmaker, I mean, in rushing the passer and making plays in coverage, and if you're not that true playmaker, I mean, you don't have to be Micah Parsons, but if you're not a proven playmaker in different facets of playing defense at that second level, it's hard to justify taking that linebacker in the first round. Even a guy like Junior Colson, who's awesome, has good tape. He's a young player. He's going to be a starter for a long time. It'd be hard to justify taking him as early as the first round. And that's why with a lot of these guys, after those first two with Edgerrin Cooper and Colson, it becomes a little bit of a grab bag. Exactly what are you looking for? What type of qualities do you care about in your linebackers? And that answer to that's going to be different from team to team. And so, it's an interesting position this year.
Well, and this is what it is. It's Junior Colson. I think Dane and I are in agreement. It's that he's both our linebacker 1. It's just like he feels almost safe to me, where it's like he's young, he's smart, he's enough of an athlete, enough of a good tackler. I'm good with him as my linebacker 1. Another guy that I kind of ended up being the same argument for me was Cedric Gray from North Carolina, who's now my linebacker 3, which I was not looking at him that way, and then started stacking him. I'm like, well, he's kind of fast. He kind of hits pretty well. He kind of sees the game well. He's kind of good in coverage. All right, I'll take a chance on you in round 3. That because I'm watching linebackers across the league. You have to do it all now. Like you just can't be a 2-down player like Dane was saying. I get that with the Eichenberg stuff. It's But with Gray is I really warmed to him because he does enough well that, okay, maybe you are a 3-down starting linebacker, which I think is one of the harder positions to find right now. So he's a guy I would take a chance on was Gray.
Let's get to the cornerbacks. You guys both had the same 2 names that you wanted to talk about. Yeah. Dane, let's start with Ennis Rakestraw from Mizzou. You have him at 49 on your big board. Nate has him at 45 on his big board. What was complicated about trying to evaluate Ennis Rakestraw as you were watching his tape?
I get why people like him because, man, he's a dog. And that's what you want from your corners, right? You want guys that match up physically and have a little bit of edge to the way they play, their play style. And he brings that. He has that. But he's not a big guy. He's 5'11 and a half, 183 pounds. And he's not fast. I mean, he ran a 4.51 at the combine, and then Rakestraw at his pro day 4.56. Actually went in the wrong direction. And you see that lack of long speed show up from time to time. Didn't have a ton of ball production this past year. He was also banged up. He was hurt. So I like the play style. I just don't love the player. I like the player, just don't love the player. And that's why I was surprised to see Rakestraw pop up in first-round mocks. I couldn't get there with him. I think he's a solid day 2 player, probably a second-round player. But because of those issues, the missing time due to injury, being a smaller player, not having great straight-line speed, not having a ton of ball production, with those only 1 career interception in 4 years at Missouri. So all those things combined, and just gives me a little bit of pause with him.
I don't like the tone that you're using, talking about a 5'11", 185-pound guy without long speed from Mizzou. Personally, that's all I'm saying. As somebody who also fits that profile. Nate, the guy you brought up that you compared him to on your big board, which I think is an interesting name and an interesting discussion, was Carlton Davis, right? Yeah. And so if you look at Carlton Davis, similar concerns about the long speed. They ran almost the exact same 40. But
play style here.
but I think that's why it's worth talking about to me, because Carlton Davis is bigger. He's taller and also has more length and more size. So if you're going to have that play style where you're physical, you have that kind of dog mentality to you, can you get away with that if you're not built like Carlton Davis? And that seems like kind of the central question for a guy like Rakestraw as you're projecting him to the next level.
I'm not the first person to point this out, but there's a lot of similarities between tackle play and corner play and receivers and pass rushers. It's ability to recover. Carlton Davis has long arms. He can recover. He has enough twitch with his size to recover when he gets caught out of position a lot because he's so aggressive. And so like that, that's why Rakestraw has fallen like a stone for me. I had him around 33 and he just keeps dropping the testing is just, it's too concerning. You should be able to wake up and run. If you're going to be this size, if he was 202 pounds, okay, we're talking way different here, but he's not. This is what he plays at. And these guys have issues in the NFL where everybody's bigger, faster, stronger, and just as good of a route runner. I love his competitiveness. I love his tenaciousness. It reminds me a little bit of the discussion. This guy was a little bit smarter than more aggressive. The guy, Clark Phillips from Utah last year, Dane.
Utah.
Yeah. Where he went to Atlanta, day 2 guy.
Fourth round pick. Yeah.
He was a fourth round pick. Yeah.
Love his game. Love his feistiness. I love his smarts. Got to be real. You have to be realistic.
He also had insane ball production in college, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yep,
yes, he did. So that's why I'm trying to be realistic with him, where it's like, shoot, if I had to update this again, he might drop another 10 spots, because I'm just trying to be realistic. Even if I like his play style a lot, I love corners that play like this, but NFL is just a different beast. And some of the ball, like why he doesn't come up with production, he has tiny hands. So he probably doesn't have strong hands to come away with the ball. So he can pop them away, but not come down with them. So again, another alarm bell goes off.
Also, some injury concerns with Rakestraw, right? Torn ACL, missing time with the groin this year. So you combine that with the size, and it seems like there are some real alarm bells that are ringing here.
He did in the 40 wasn't great, but also no vertical and no 3-cone, which is also, not having those numbers. It is what it is, but you just wish you had that to fall back on as a reason to really believe in him. And unfortunately, we don't have that.
And same sort of concerns it feels like for Kamari Lassiter from Georgia, who's the other guy you wanted to mention here, Dane. 4.64 in the 40 at his pro day. And I went back today and was just looking historically at corners who are running in the mid 4.6s over the last 20 years. There are not a lot of success stories here. No. The 2 names you could throw out that ran a 4.64 or worse at the combine over the last 20 years that had some sustained relevance in the NFL. Levi Wallace and Josh Norman are like the only two guys that I could come up with. So even if you
Levi
like
Wallace
Kamari Lassiter,
he wasn't drafted, right?
yeah, he might have even been drafted. He played. He's had a decent career. He's been a starter for half a dozen years, but he wasn't even drafted. So, and I don't think Josh Norman was drafted either, was he?
No, I don't think.
I thought he was. I thought he
was like round 5, maybe.
Yeah, 5, 6, something like
fifth rounder. Yep.
All right, fifth round. Yes,
but still day 3.
Yes. So I think that's a real concern, but it seems like that's another thing where you can like the play style, you can like the presence and what he was for that Georgia defense, but some of those actual nuts and bolts elements of who he is are definitely concerning.
And it's weird because he had you're talking about the best 3-cone in this draft class, 6.62 for Lassiter, and then he goes out and the 40 time being 4.64, and I mean, there was a lot of the best 40 time I heard, and I checked with a lot of teams. The best 40 that I got from a team was 4.59, but most teams had it in that low to mid 4.6s. So, and he's not a big guy. It's not like we're talking about a 6'2", 205-pound corner. He is mid 180s, under 6 foot. And so is he can you play outside corner in the NFL at that size and that speed? Or are we talking about a nickel only? And if he's a nickel only, then all of a sudden that changes how we view him as a prospect, which makes it tougher. So I struggle with Kamari Lassiter because I like the tape. I think if you just watch the tape and know nothing about his athletic profile, I think you give him a solid 2nd round grade. But then you watch you have the testing information and you compare it and it's like, okay, I would still for me I'm still taking him somewhere in round 2, but I will understand if he ends up falling to round 3 because of some of these limitations.
Nate, it feels like you have a lot of similar concerns, even if you're marginally higher on him.
I love, God, you love his tape. He's so smart and he's tough, and it's just so much. Coaches probably love this guy, and I in my head, I'm like, well, just run cover 2 with him and just hide him and let him be smart. But how many teams do that these days? None. So it's like, just a couple on a couple plays. So like Dane's saying, all right, it's just like when I talk about receivers, outside, inside versatility, slot only. If you're slot only, you better be a dynamo with tape that has to take him in really in the 2nd round. Really, that drops you just naturally to the 3rd. And I really like this player. It's just that, again, it's the head versus heart thing that you have to be realistic about it. But he's smart. I think he could survive in the slot just based on how defenses run right now. And because he can use his intelligence and hitting ability, he's a good tackler. But it's just, again, it's what's his upside? If you're getting man coverage and he has to go against an NFL receiver and he has to live in that on 3rd down, he takes away as much as he adds. And so how do you value that? And it's tough. These two are very tough. Love their play styles. I really like the players. They're both so smart, but you have to be realistic about being an NFL athlete.
Last position we wanted to hit here was safety. You guys both had similar names you wanted to talk about. Dane, Cole Bishop from Utah and Calen Bullock for USC both pop up to you here. What about those guys was difficult for you as you were studying them?
With Bishop, I really liked him. There's a lot to his game against the pass and the run that you like. It just came down, and he tested outstanding. 6'2", 206, ran in the mid 4.4s, 39-inch vert. So there's a lot about it, like the tape, like what he did testing wise. The hang up with me with Cole Bishop is, as rangy as he is, and I think as smart as he is, he didn't make a ton of plays on the football. He did have a pair of interceptions, but he only had 5 passes defended the entire year. There were times where I was like, okay, go make a play. And a lot of times he wasn't quite there. And so at the safety position, that's something that I care a lot about is, can you go make a play when I need it? And I really like Cole Bishop. He's my 4th safety. I like an late 2nd, early 3rd round grade on him. But the absence of the big plays is something that kind of bothered me when I was ranking these safeties and putting them together. And I think the way I worded it in my report is I want to see more impact plays, and I want to see him set more traps for the quarterback. If you want a guy that can just see it and go, he'll do it. But in terms of setting traps and anticipating and making those impact plays, I just didn't see enough of it. And maybe I'm beating him up too much, but that was Cole Bishop. And then with Calen Bullock, I really struggle with him because I love the range. He reminds me a lot of Trevin Morig he's coming out of TCU, except Bullock is under 190 and he's 6'2", so he's lanky. There are times on tape where his tackling was just horrendous. And if you're the last line of defense as a safety, I have to be able to trust you that you're going to be able to get the man on the ground as a tackler. And I struggle with that with him. So yeah, he has great range where, it doesn't matter, split safety, center field, if he can make plays at the sideline. But if I can't trust you to be a consistent tackler, whether you're screaming down the alley and making plays on a screen pass or, you're making a play at the sideline, if I can't trust you to get the man on the ground, that's going to be a problem. And I think that's kind of my hang up with Bullock, exactly where to rank him among these safeties this year.
Pardon me here, but you're a little more bullish on Bullock, Nate, with your ranking of him. You have him at 61 compared to where Dane has him off his top 100. Why are you why are you not as concerned about some of those downside aspects?
I'm banking a little on a post Alex Grinch bump, the defense coordinator from USC. So I'm banking a little that some of his out of whackness is because he had no idea where to go, because they were just do stuff there just to do stuff. So that's what a little bit where I'm a little more optimistic, but I agree with Dane. He's a little out of control, kind of can come flying, and that's Notre Dame. He makes a great play, and then 2 plays later, it's like, okay, what are you doing? Like, you're not even near the ball. But I think he does stuff. And I think that's what I like. Mm-hmm. It's actually a discussion with Bishop too. It's the opposite of that, where at least he's around the ball. He's at least he shows enough that I'm betting that he gets out of that defense where he's running every which way and can just play in a defense that just lets him be controlled and focus his energy. That's why I'm a little more bullish on him than Dane is. And with Bishop, really him and Peyton Wilson, the linebacker, are kind of the same way for NC State. You get to see him run a lot, which is great, but that's because they're running to the ball and they're a little bit late to run to the ball. Like, you don't get to see him take on a tackler take on a blocker and shed him and make the tackle or anything. It's a lot of running the ball carry down 10 yards down the field. It's like, oh, can you make a TFL as opposed to a 6 yards down the field? And it's great. You're a great athlete. I'm with Dane. I struggled with Bishop. I liked him, but then they used him in a particular way. A lot of stuff near the line of scrimmage. He did a lot of stuff where he was man with a tight end already. He's got really short arms. And I think that came up a lot when he did have to shed a blocker. He's 6'2" with sub 30-inch arms, which is, I don't know what that's a new one for me. So but that is like where I see some limitations with him, but I do like the athlete, and I think some special team coaches would probably like him too because of all the stuff they can bring there. So the last guy I bring up is Kamren Kinchens, which it's like the opposite. Love his intelligence, love his aggressiveness to the ball. Not a good athlete, and he has really no ability to recover, which showed up on film. He's a boom bust safety. Again, a guy I think that will get some help in the NFL where he can kind of channel his energy a little bit and just say, we're playing quarters. This is your area. Okay. Just stay to this area. Okay. Don't go all the way to, you're not Ed Reed. Don't go 20 yards over there. So I like Kinchens. I do it, but he's a boom bust safety and he's not a great athlete. So I kind of kept him a little lower.
Just stay in your area. It's a good lesson for all of us.
Stay in your area.
All right, guys. That's all we got. Hit about 20 guys at least on this show. So a lot of the more difficult conversations and evaluations that we're going to have and people are going to have in this process, hopefully a little bit more context, a little bit more information on a lot of those guys. That is all we've got for today. I will be back with Deontay on Friday. We're doing some defensive players mailbag. So answer your guys' questions on some defensive prospect queries that you have. Excited about doing that. We will be back next week, the three of us. Just a quick reminder, please go check out The Beast on The Athletic if you have not. If you don't have an Athletic subscription, this is the time to get one because that's all you need to read the best draft guide on the market. Also, one more piece of housekeeping. We will be live the first 2 nights of the draft coming to you from Detroit. Me, Dane, Nate, special guests, bells and whistles, a lot of fun stuff. Please come hang out with us during the draft. It's going to be a phenomenal draft. There's so much intrigue in the top 10 this year, in the first round in general, so many big name guys, and we will be around to respond to every single pick for the first 2 nights of the draft. Very excited about it and very excited for all of you guys to join us. For now, that is all we've got. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you very soon.